One of the little thought patterns that came up was the concept that if something isn't hard, then it's not really worth it. If something is easy, it's not worthy.
But what I think is interesting is what you said about being worthy, like the harder thing being a worthy thing because it is challenging.
I think we have to be really purposeful to see that as just one paradigm, one way to see life, and step out of it into how the rest of the world works.
No pain, no gain philosophy, and everything that's worth doing is going to be hard. Since you went to university to study medicine, you were trying to reach this point, right? And it's taken the best part of like a decade or so to get there, right? Ultimately, by the time you get there, by the time I got there, I was very much spat out the other side, deep burnout, wondered if I wanted to do medicine anymore.
It's understandable that so many of us believe in this sort of very simple linear equation. More pain, more gain. And with that, you can also appreciate how terrifying it is for so many of us to turn down the pain, turn down the struggle, because we can easily make that translate to, I'm going to be less even in my life.
I always kind of wanted to be one of those people where medicine was there 24/7 because that's what I felt like was rewarded, and I thought that was what I was supposed to be. And I always felt like because I wasn't quite like that I wasn't living and breathing it. I always felt there was something wrong with me.
For a lot of us, what served us so far in medicine will potentially look very different to what we want the rest of our life to look like. But the question that we want to ask you guys, for all of you guys who are on the other side, is how long did you spend after you fellowed letting life be easy? Just really sit back and wait a moment with us. How long, after all those years of work, telling yourself that life was going to be better on the other side, did you actually spend letting life be easy?
Hello, my beautiful friends. My name is Dr. Beck.
And I am Christine Barker, and this is Am I Doing It Wrong? A podcast for doctors by doctors. Every week on the pod, we'll be bringing you conversations which shine light in dark places, normalise the doctor journey, ease unnecessary suffering, and give you actionable steps to thrive in all facets of your life. So grab a cuppa and get cozy for this week's episode of Am I Doing It Wrong? The podcast for doctors by doctors. Hello everyone, welcome back to the poddy, another episode. And today we are going to be really getting down to business with something that is very close to our hearts as doctors. And I guess the question that brings it all together is that even though you are a doctor, you went to med school, maybe even did postgrad, you got about 3 million degrees, do you still feel like you always need to prove yourself? Just sit with that for just a wee second. I'm willing to bet that most of us feel like we need to prove ourselves on many levels, maybe in medicine, maybe outside of medicine. There's always something. As high achievers, I think we're struggling with this. And so that's what we're going to be unpacking today. We're going to be talking about how this is showing up in our lives and in doctor lives in general. And then what we can do about it, really getting into, we've got obviously Dr. Beck as our thought wizard. She's going to be telling us why we're doing this and why we're getting in our own way. So hopefully we can do something about it. And also we have to tell you that Beck today, I've been calling Beck Darth Beck because she has a viral infection of all viral infections. And through this microphone, she does sound a bit like Darth Vader. So if you hear what sounds like Darth Vader, it's just Beck trying to breathe. Also, for those of you who are having an audio experience, Beck is extremely pregnant right now, and I'm just looking at her and she's like, I'm trying not to laugh, and she's holding her belly, and I'm thinking, is that baby going to pop out if she laughs? Because again, apart from the Darth Beck, we got some other stuff to deal with. Anyway, so we're going to be talking about this issue of potentially having to prove ourselves as doctors. And I guess I can think of a way that this shows up on the other side of training. So I'm obviously a consultant now, and I found that there's also times during your training where this can show up. And Beck, you had a real example from one of our dear darling group meetings recently. Can you tell us a bit about how this showed up for one of your clients?
We were talking about picking a particular specialty, It's a fun and exciting challenge for so many of us when we can see ourselves in so many different specialty options. But if you've been in that situation too, where you didn't have your heart set locked on a particular specialty from the start, I imagine you can appreciate that, quote, dilemma of having too many wonderful, exciting options. It's actually quite painful and difficult because you're kind of sitting there being like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? What am I going to dedicate my life to? And in particular, my hard work, blood, sweat, and tears, as we know that it takes with any specialty that you take in medicine. It doesn't matter which path you take, it's going to take a lot from you. It's going to ask a lot of you. So she has this beautiful problem of having lots of different options. But as we were talking, one of the things that came up that I think seems to be incredibly common in the very least the subconscious mind of lots of doctors, if not the very conscious mind of many doctors, is the importance of choosing something that we deem challenging enough, hard enough to be worthy of our life's effort, our life's attention, our life's dedication. And essentially, one of the little thought patterns that came up was the concept that if something isn't hard, then it's not really worth it. And reciprocally, if something is easy, it's not worthy. It's even a waste of time to do something easy. Have you ever had that experience of thinking that if something's easy for you, if something's not challenging you, it's wasting your time? And not only do I see this throughout almost all of the doctors that I work with and the clients that I work with, this importance that we hold on things being challenging and difficult to us. But this is something that's incredibly close to my heart. I know that when I was in medical school, I had a very strong mindset along this way where I used to think that the hard way was the only way. I believed so strongly in no pain, no gain, to the point that I would probably find myself doing things in nonsensically more difficult ways for the sake of it being hard, because I didn't want to, quote, take a shortcut. I didn't want to, quote, take the easy route. And it was like that emphasis on the importance and the worthiness of something being tied up with it being challenging, with it being difficult, totally skewed my decision-making process, because it would blind me to the actual outcomes, the actual point of what I was doing so often, because I would preference taking the hard route instead of taking what alternatively might have been the more efficient route, just the smarter route to get to the exact same place, just with less resources, less time, and less energy. And all of that illogical reasoning and decision-making came from this virtuous idea that doing the hard thing and the challenging thing is more worthy. Christine and I were talking about this phenomenon that comes up, and we can see, and we'll talk around how this shows up for doctors today. But we notice that a lot of us as doctors have so much trouble with just sitting in the ease of life. And Christine pointed out that this is a really classic thing that happens when you do finish your fellowship and you become a consultant. You know, so many of us are sitting here holding our breath before that moment, thinking, when I get there, life will be great. You know, not quite easy. We don't say the word easy, do we? But we're like, life will be good. And what we mean by that is we'll be relieved of all of the pressure, the stress, all the challenges that come with the training pathways that are really not designed to be something that you do long term, right? They're really jam-packed with extra work, extra hours, extra responsibilities, extracurricular activities that you can do for a short period of your life. So we all accept that it's a very hard period. And so we're holding our breath and waiting until we become a consultant. And then we are, quote, done. We're established. But the question that we want to ask you guys, for all of you guys who are on the other side, is How long did you spend after you fellowed letting life be easy? Just really sit back and wait a moment with us. How long, after all those years of work, telling yourself that life was going to be better on the other side, did you actually spend letting life be easy after that enormous achievement?
It's really an interesting question. And I love everything you said. And I'm going to circle back to that sort of my experience of that as well in a second of finishing. But I think it was just really interesting what you said about your own philosophy. And even before you get there, this kind of no pain, no gain philosophy, and everything that's worth doing is going to be hard. And I think there is some truth to that. Like, I don't think that things in life come easily necessarily, like you say. But there are these like decisions we make or the perceptions we have, and we can make things a lot harder for ourselves or not lean into the ease, even when it's right there in front of us. Even if it could be easy and achieve the same result, we often choose the harder route, is what you're saying, right? The person that you were coaching was having that trouble with career decisions. Should I choose the inverted commas easy path or the not easy path, even though truly every path is got challenges. But what I think is interesting is what you said about being worthy, like the harder thing being a worthy thing because it is challenging. And what I find super interesting is just the paradox of like why that's happening is something to do with the fact that we don't feel worthy underneath. Like I feel like that was my experience of it anyway, was that I had this relationship with productivity and like having to be doing lots of things and achieving lots of things to feel like I had any inherent value in myself and how I perceive myself, but also how other people perceive me. And so it's so interesting, isn't it? Because when we're thinking through it, we're thinking about the thing and like why we're doing the thing, when really there's this kind of inherent underlying problem about worthiness in ourselves. Like we're just not enough to just be. Like it's just not enough to just be who you are, your human self. And we've got all these layers of achievement on it. And I think it's a real side effect of having had achievements.
That's so true. I think you've really hit the nail on the head there. And I wasn't even thinking that deeply about it. Like, where does that sense of worthiness that we're seeking in the hard work, where's that desire being driven from? And it's because we obviously don't feel worthy as we are, where we are. And we want to sort of use achievements and productivity, as you say, to sort of substitute in that worthiness.
It's crazy. And I think it's worthwhile just pointing that out for everyone listening, because I feel like understanding that about yourself can be a key to unlocking a lot more ease. Once you sort of see it, you can't unsee it. But yeah, circling back to when you finish, because yeah, you make these decisions throughout your career. It feels hard. Maybe you did choose the inverted commas hard path and everything's a bit hard. Everything's always going to be hard during training. There's exams, there's all the things. You get to the other side and all of a sudden you're at the destination and you've been working so hard. Basically, since you went to university to study medicine, you were trying to reach this point, right? And it's taken the best part of like a decade or so to get there, right? Ultimately, by the time you get there, I always laugh. I always say that I gave up my 20s, sat in the library to be a doctor. It's easy to be a doctor. You just give up your 20s. I'm sure that not everyone had that experience, but there is a lot of sacrifice that goes into it. And you get to the end and you think, great, I've made it. And I think we've talked on other episodes about how by the time I got there, I was very much spat out the other side, deep burnout, wondered if I wanted to do medicine anymore. But once I sort of recovered from that and I decided I did want to continue to do medicine, once I was sort of recalibrated and back to normal, I still felt like the world was telling me that wasn't enough. You know, people were saying, oh, you really need to do a master's in something, or you need to do a PhD in something. You need to do all this additional research. And it just felt so sad to me after getting to that stage. But there was equally this tension of like, okay, so I've achieved all this and I feel like there should be a point in my life where I actually do just get to enjoy what I do. Except I think what was actually happening at that time was I was thinking about, whoa, if I just relax now, that means I'm not ambitious anymore. And I was actually more ambitious when I was at med school than I am right now. So I've done it backwards. Like, what's wrong with me? I just felt like almost I was judging my own want for ease. Like I was judging the fact that, you know, I'd come through my exams, and after doing my physician's exams, I said to myself, promised myself, I am never, ever, ever again, ever doing an exam. It doesn't matter what that means. If that means that I want to move to a certain country, I'm not going to do that because I'm not going to sit an exam to go there. And I had such a bad time during my exams that I made that decision. But equally, that sounds very small-minded. But that was just where I was at. I felt like I'd struggled enough. I'd sacrificed enough at this stage. And I'm sure a lot of people listening can totally resonate with that, how much you do sacrifice to just do your training and just be able to show up to work, all these qualifications you need on top of med school. But when I got to that stage where I decided I'm tired, I don't want to do any more exams, I don't want to do a master's, I don't want to do a PhD, I just want to be a doctor and use the training that I've had, there was a mix of me feeling like I had lost my ambition, that I was less than in some way, and I had the outside world kind of telling me that I had to be something else. I had to stretch for more, and yet I didn't want to. And I guess the thing is when you become a consultant in whatever field, when you finally get to the end of whatever pathway you're on, the truth is that no one tells you is that you can do whatever you want to do. Like, as in, no one can take that away from you. You can have flexibility, you can design your week, you can work public, private, whatever you want to do. There's actually no rules, but that's not what we're told as we go. And that's not what we're told by our colleagues at the end. And so it can leave you feeling this sense of it's never enough. This and it's always going to be a struggle.
Well, the fact that you called it small-mindedness when you were referring to not wanting to work harder, not wanting to struggle more, not wanting to do another exam as an example of something that creates that struggle and dis-ease in your life. I just think that's another symptom of this mindset that we're talking about, where, again, we're saying that because we seem to believe that hard work is the way to doing something worthy. And without that hard work aspect, without that struggle aspect, without that pain, there is no gain. And this is just a misunderstanding. And I think for doctors, this is something that we definitely very implicitly reinforced, because it sort of is how all of our system is set up. If you just work hard enough, I truly believe this, and I know that there are some exceptions, but if you work hard enough in whatever area it is along this pathway from, the moment you're in high school and you're doing the work to get into medical school, all the way up to being post-fellowed and trying to get into that next particular role that you want, or complete that research, or da-da-da-da-da. In general, if you just insert more energy, insert more effort, you will get the result in the end. There are exceptions, of course, but that is generally how we see our system works in medicine. You work hard, and with that, you probably suffer a bit and feel a bit of pain, but we can usually quite clearly see how that creates the result. We have had this very much reinforced to us just with the way that our system is set up. And so it's understandable that so many of us believe in this sort of very simple linear equation. More pain, more gain. And with that, you can also appreciate how terrifying it is for so many of us to turn down the pain, turn down the struggle, because we can easily make that translate to, I'm going to be less even in my life. Do you share that thought process that is so relatable of, I'm being small-minded to want to turn down that pain dial after finishing consultancy? It jumps out in my mind that we're just missing so much of the rest of life. Doesn't play by those rules. That doesn't play by turning up the pain dial, creating more gains, which is an enormous amount of life. Take travel, take relationships, love in general, friendships, all these other beautiful aspects of life, creativity, that if you turn up the pain, you're probably actually going to be turning down the gain in those experiences. But we're so stuck in this paradigm, I think, as doctors, not to our fault, but probably just because we've been so immersed in the system. And as you say, Christine, from these very formative years and all throughout our 20s, we've just been in this system. And I think that's really why Christine and I wanted to bring this topic to you guys today, because I think we have to be really purposeful to see that as just one paradigm, one way to see life, and step out of it into how the rest of the world works. Because if we don't, it's so easy for all of us to just stay in that paradigm and stay creating these painful, struggling situations in our life, which might produce some awesome results. But we just want to ask you guys, is that all that you want for your life? Or do you want to be purposeful about creating something different? Because the other aspect of this is, as much as it might seem like it should be an easy thing to turn down the pain dial and step out of that paradigm that is really uncomfortable and it is hard. You have to work very hard to stay in that paradigm. But at the same time, we want to acknowledge that it's actually terrifying to step out of it. Because remember, you're thinking, this is your way of seeing the world as a doctor. If I turn down the pain dial, I'm also turning down the results that I have in my life. I'm even turning down the worthiness of my results and maybe even the worthiness of myself.
I absolutely agree with you. And I actually, talking about other aspects of life, like taking it there, I think it's actually a really important thing, because when we're going through the hard thing as doctors, getting to the end of our training, or even when you finish your training, if you do decide to do extra things on top, which a lot of people do, and I applaud them, like that's amazing. The balance of life is tricky. Like I think if you're doing like the real hard stuff we're talking about, that all doctors are expected to do, we all relate to that feeling of, for phases in your life, for seasons, you're not balanced. You're not seeing your family, your children, your partner as much as you might want to, right? Like, I think that's probably true. You're maybe not relaxing and doing creative. You know, when I talk to my BPTs, for example, my doctors in training that I work with, during their exams, it's very rare to see anyone doing anything that they love, whether it's baking a cake or painting a picture. Everything goes on hold. But then when all that's over, it can still feel very uncomfortable to actually relax into it. Even when you don't have an exam looming or whatever, it's such an unfamiliar place, like relaxation. And I think it is because of this pain gain meter that you're talking about, turning up that dial. It can feel just so strange and foreign to be in those more just joyful places, basically. And this, when you were talking, I remembered recently a conversation with a colleague, and I thought it was funny at the time, I'm not judging this person for doing what they're doing, but I remember this colleague telling me that when they went on holiday with their children and family, they read articles, like they read medical publications on holiday. And some of you listening may do that. But I just thought to myself, I don't want to. I don't want to. I want a clean cut, like between my life, like the holiday that I'm paying all this money to go on in another country, and medical literature. It's not welcome, right? but this person was like, this is the only time I get to read my articles, and they obviously love doing that. But I just thought to myself, holy Mick, union of things that should not go together. I don't know. I don't want to be, personally, it's not my vibe. But what about you, Mick? What do you think of that? Is that like do you think that person has trouble with what we're talking about, or they just love medicine so much?
I think it's possible they love medicine so much. And also, I just like to say that used to be me. And I used to genuinely want to do that work while I was on holidays because I believed that it was serving me. You know, I believed that it was serving a future version of myself. It wasn't purely for the love of it, but I thought I was doing a good thing for myself. And now I just see things very differently. I see appreciating more than just medicine in life. That time is incredibly precious. Being pregnant at the moment and just being aware of how quickly the pregnancy itself has gone, my appreciation of this has come from each phase of the pregnancy. Like 9 months is a long time, but each phase of the pregnancy is very, very different. And so you can see how actually in each little tiny microphase, you don't actually have much time. And so with that, 9 months seems like a long time, but when you're just considering the microphases, it's not very long. And it's the same when I go on holidays with even just my partner. You know, we'll be in one space on one day together in this particular mood with this particular moment. And it's like, actually, this moment is incredibly special. It's unrepeatable. And I have this sense of there's so much possibility in this moment for us if I'm open to it. But if I'm close to it, if I'm distracting myself by doing something else, anything that takes me out of the moment, that just seems like a really big opportunity cost to me. And I would have never appreciated this back in my days of no pain, no gain. I wouldn't have been aware of what I had to lose in that moment, what the opportunities were there, because I hadn't lived enough life, to really be able to appreciate what else there is. I was just in that mindset of, if I read this extra thing, if I learn this extra thing, then this will put me in a better position in the future, and it would have been in the hospital because I desperately wanted to be smarter, more on top of things, more efficient, da-da-da-da-da. I could see the opportunity cost there. So I wanted to just, read and learn the next thing. But I didn't truly have the ability to weigh it up with what else was available, just because I hadn't experienced enough of what else was available. There are lots of reasons why I love and adore my partner. One of the main reasons is he has really helped me transition out of just being all productivity, all medicine, and inspired me into being more present in life and being more explorative and living in the moment with that. Having been on both sides, and definitely not to invalidate this person's wants and desires, I know there are people who are just like, give me a journal and I will sit there happily all weekend and read it and I will be my most content self. But I have been on both sides. For me, it was a misunderstanding of what else was available because, my goodness gracious, guys, there is a lot of life to live and it is a beautiful world out there.
And I think the other thing is, I was just thinking about, like, if I had an exam and I decided I'm going to go and like sit on a beach and read these papers rather than sit in my house, like, I also think that there's like a way to merge your goals as well. Like, but I thought it was interesting because it was so different from the way I think. But I think I've always been that way in terms of medicine isn't my full life. I think that's maybe why the struggle was real. So I always kind of wanted to be one of those people where medicine was there 24/7 because that's what I felt like was rewarded, and I thought that was what I was supposed to be. And I always felt like because I wasn't quite like that I wasn't living and breathing it, and I always wanted to express these other facets of myself. I always felt there was something wrong with me, and I always felt like that would have been a better way to be. So there's a part of me that has deep envy for people who are like that.
There's some things that we'd really like for you to look at from this episode. You've got your behaviors, you've got how you show up, the decisions that you make. They're your behaviors. What you do and the decisions you make, call them behaviors. There's no right or wrong behaviors. But for you guys to explore the kind of life you want to live and the kind of person you want to be, you want to look at those behaviors from the perspective of what is driving those behaviors, which is going to be your thoughts, perspectives, your beliefs, and your emotions. So you'll always be able to, when you build enough insight with yourself, if one of the behaviors is deciding to do the really, really tough path, or one of the behaviors is deciding to take work away on a holiday with yourself, if you sit with yourself, you can ask, where is this desire, where is this drive coming from? Where is this behavior coming from? And when you let yourself answer that, you'll see the reasons. You'll see either thoughts will explain why it's important to you or why you want to do it, which might be desire, because I'll feel better, because it would be enjoyable. Or it might be a driver that's like, I want to do it because I'll feel better. I'll feel relief. If I just get this off my plate, I'll feel relief. Or if I don't do it, I'll feel guilty. I'll feel afraid that I'm falling behind, something like that. So it might be these kind of thoughts that explain the behavior to you, or it might be an emotion that comes up when you think about doing the behavior you might feel, or you think about not doing the behavior, you might feel that sense of fear or this constrictedness, this discomfort. And that might help you clue into the fact that you're doing it because you're actually afraid of the consequences of not doing it. And as Christine said before, that can easily track back to things like, if I don't do it, I'll tell myself that I'm being lazy, like I'm taking the easy route. I'm taking a shortcut, or deep down, I won't be worthy if I'm not doing something productive. Or you might find, you think about taking your papers to the beach with your family and you just feel like lit up and expansive. And you're like, this is the perfect combination of everything. I've got my kids and my family here, and my partner's happily, like, I don't know, playing the sandbox, the world's sandbox at the beach with them. And you were just blissfully there in your own little world, reading away, and you're just like delighted and lit up. But that's really the way to start to not only make decisions in your life about when you want to let things be easy or when you want things to be hard, but it's, for a lot of us, just a really good place to start. Because for many of us, we'll find that we just do things because we've always done them that way. We just make these decisions because it comes automatically and with ease to us. But if you just start to ask yourself, why? Where is this coming from? Then you'll start to see your reasons, you'll start to see your drivers, and they can help you decide, do I like my reasons? Do I like how I'm making these decisions? And importantly, do I want to keep making decisions and behaving from this reasoning? Because for a lot of us, what served us so far in medicine will potentially look very different to what we want the rest of our life to look like, especially when you're in that post-consultancy period and you've done the bulk of the very compulsory kind of restrictive training, hard work period. It's a really beautiful opportunity to start making new decisions for yourself that build that life that you really want. And for a lot of us, hard feels familiar, hard feels comfortable, hard makes us feel like we're doing something worthy. But actually, ease, peace, joy, presence, all these beautiful, more positive, if not just neutral places to live your life from. These are the things that if you can add them back into your life, they're going to help you create an incredibly fulfilling and more well-rounded life, even as a busy, hard-working doctor.
I love that. It was beautifully summed up, Beck. And I guess for everyone listening, I really hope that you know that you are enough and you have nothing to prove and you have already achieved amazing things. And whatever you achieve, congratulations and good luck to you. And also, it's not essential to have the most beautiful life. Sometimes you have done enough and you can relax, and that's okay too. So whatever you choose, I guess it's just this episode was really just to have that top of mind. And I think the way you said there is a transition between those two phases in life as well, I think that could be interesting for people to have a think about. We want you to live the fullest life, your happiest life, and the hardest path is the one that basically you don't want to do, the one that doesn't align with you as well. So doing something that's not in your heart space, that is also hard just because you don't want to do it on a deep, deep level. So thank you so much for listening. We hope that you have enjoyed this episode and we'll see you again soon in our next one. Bye.
I've been waiting all my life for something. I've been down the darkest roads and I've